At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES Podcast with your host, Soulblazer.
Hello, everybody. This is the Super NES Podcast, episode number 258. Your two regular co-hosts are here, Greg and Joe.
Hello.
And we're also delighted to have, as teased in the last episode, a special guest host for everybody here. Friend of the podcast, returning for his fourth episode, as we determined before we started recording here. Welcome back to the podcast, Sean. Glad to have you back again.
Hello, everybody. Good to be back.
Yes, and so because Sean has been so great with past episodes, been enjoying just for joining special appearances, when we came up with our list of podcasts of games we wanted to record for this year, we told him, you have any invitation to join us for any game on here that you want to talk about, blah, blah, that kind of stuff. So, and the only game we picked this year was this one we're talking about this episode, Kirby's Dream Land 3, which has the distinction of being the very last Nintendo published game for the Super NES. So, I'm curious to know, Sean, what made you feel strong enough about this game to want to come on here and talk about it?
So I've been a Kirby fan ever since Kirby's Adventure for the NES.
Which is not the first game in the series, by the way.
Right.
You do know that.
I played the original Dreamland afterward when my friend got a Super Game Boy, and then I played it that way, which was kind of weird going backwards. It's like, wait, there's no copy abilities in this one? Because Kirby's Adventure kind of like set the standard for that going forward, and like people think of Kirby now and they think copy abilities, but yeah, so I started with the NES game, then went back to the Game Boy one, and then after that played Dreamland 2, and then I bought Kirby Superstar for Super Nintendo, and then eventually played this game after that.
Right.
And then I've played a bunch of Kirby games since then.
Yeah, so you actually did what a lot of people did, because even though Kirby's Adventure came out late in the NES lifespan in 1993, it seems that game got more attention than Kirby's Dream Land did, because even though Kirby's Dream Land was a very innovative game for the Game Boy and did sell very well, like you said, a lot of things we associate with Kirby really became standard at that point, including its very distinctive pink color.
Yeah.
Side note, for like a bit of trivia, when they were, obviously the Game Boy didn't have any color. So Kirby's Adventure was the first time that the game was in color, and Shigeru Miyamoto had suggested Kirby should be yellow, but they decided to go ahead and make him pink instead, which I think in hindsight was a pretty good idea. But anyway, yeah, so, Kirby's Dream Land 3 is the fifth mainline game in the franchise to come out. Sean mentioned most of the other ones already. Dreamland was first for the Game Boy, then Adventure for the NES, then Dreamland 2, which was also a Game Boy game. Then Superstar, which you've already covered before in the podcast, the Super NES, and then this game. So we've also covered, by the way, there were also a bunch of other side games in the franchise as well, too. There was also like a pinball game. There was some puzzle games. And there was also, Joe was here with me before we covered this game. It was in the, I actually think it was like very shortly after you joined the podcast, Joe, when we covered Kirby's Dream Course.
Yeah, we did Dream Course, and then I think the following week we did Superstar, or it was the other way around. We did Superstar.
It's something like that, yeah, right. So,
but yeah. Yep.
Dreams Course is a lot of fun, actually. Like, it's a pretty fun mini golf take with Kirby's elements.
Yeah.
I've seen a little bit of that game, but I've actually never played it myself.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So, But anyway, yeah. So and so we've already covered the Kirby franchise in detail in past episodes talking about Kirby games. So we're not, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here about this. But I will mention real quick here as a trivia note, since I just recently read a new interview with the man himself. Are you too familiar with the story of how Kirby got his name?
Oh, I might have known this a long time ago, but I can't think of it right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not knowledge I would have on the forefront of my mind.
Apparently, who in the development team and HAL Laboratories actually suggested this has been lost to time apparently. But somebody at the HAL Laboratory decided that decided it might be appropriate to honor somebody with kind of tongue in cheek reference that they referenced naming Kirby that at the time the 90s the only people associated with Nintendo would know about. But Kirby got his name from Jack Kirby, who was a lawyer who represented Nintendo way back in the early 80s in the famous Donkey Kong case.
Okay.
In which Universal sued Nintendo for copyright infringement because the game Donkey Kong they felt infringed upon the King Kong movie rights, and Kirby was the lawyer primarily responsible for defending Nintendo in a lawsuit, which Nintendo had lost. Probably would have spelled the end of the North American branch because they just started at that point. Donkey Kong was really their first big arcade hit, and that victory also also set a precedent for other close to but not copyright infringing copyright games that have become very famous, well known over the years. So it's that lawsuit is very important. Pretty much Universal lost the case when Kirby revealed in court that Universal, in order to make a previous King Kong remake, had actually given up the rights to King Kong in the first place. So when that came out, it was pretty much a slam dunk at that point that the judge was going to decide it was Nintendo's favor. So anyway, Jack Kirby said in the interview that he did not know this for many years and that he felt very honored by the fact, but he also kind of wondered why they would have named a little pink amorphous blob who suck down food faster than anybody else had known to exist after him in the first place. But so he feels honored, but he's also kind of it's kind of a weird honor, which I can understand feeling that way because
Japanese people are weird. What can I say?
Yeah, and Kirby himself is pretty weird himself because he can eat, but there's a whole bunch of memes and stuff that come over the years about that. As a matter of fact, Kirby actually showed up in some training materials for a security course that our company started using last year, which I had which I had to pretty good laugh at when that happened, but. But his appetite's also gotten pretty bigger in recent games too. He used to go from just wolfing down small enemies and fruits and whatnot in games like this to psyching down whole trains and cars and the later games. So he definitely is eating a lot more than he used to. But so. Dreamland 3, it pretty much just follows the formula set by now standard in the previous games that come about in the franchise. The game was in development for a long time, which is why the game was so late in coming out. It wasn't. Nobody really imagined this to be one of the last North American released games to the system, but that's that's eventually ended up happening because this finally came out in North America in November of 1997. By then, 16-bit systems were pretty much dead because by that point you had the PlayStation going full force. The N64 I think was either already out in Japan or getting close to a North American release. By then, I don't remember.
I think it came out in 96.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was already a North American release. You would have been playing Mario 64 and GoldenEye at this point.
Yeah.
Mm. So it's not a surprise this game did not sell very well because of how late it came out, which is a shame. But But yeah, the high prices the game commands on eBay these days is kind of proof of the fact that, because this game came out so late, that not many people noticed it when it came out, and therefore it didn't sell very well. But also, curiously enough, this is actually one of the rare cases in which the game came out in North America first before coming out in Japan. Why I don't know. The game the game didn't come out in Japan until several months later in March by March '98.
Yeah, I couldn't find a reason for that either.
But it was planned for European release, but there were apparently problems trying to get the game converted over to PAL because of the format because the chip it used. And at that point they're just like the 60-bit market's pretty much dead anyway. Like, why bother with it? So the game never did get a PAL release. It did finally come out, however, in PAL land as well being re-released worldwide when it came out the virtual console like for the Wii and the Wii U, and the game is available to play nowadays if you have a Switch. Because the game's part of the Nintendo Classic series, as well as many other Kirby games as well. So if you missed this game back then, you have a great way to play it now as long as you have a Switch. The game does not use anything really. You think the game might use an FX chip, like for its graphics? It doesn't. It uses the SA1 coprocessor chip instead, which is one of the reasons that they have problems trying to convert the game to PAL format. But the SA1 was a very late upgrade chip, like the FX chip for Super NES games. It stands for Super Accelerator 1. The game which best uses the chip is probably Super Mario RPG, but this game definitely does show off what that chip can also do as far as the graphical abilities. But just to finish off the Super NES story here real quick, because this game was the last game published by Nintendo for the system in North America. The last game to come out in North America for the Super NES period was Frogger the following year, 1998, which spoiler, we've covered that in past podcasts. It's a horrible port of the game, but they tried to 16-bit the graphics and again the gameplay with it, and the result was a dismal failure. The game's just not fun. The game's just not any fun to play at all. So rather sad that the system ended its life here on that game at least, but. Nintendo stopped making and selling Super NES in North America in 1999. The system did survive for a few more years in Japan. They got their last game for the system in 2000, wow. And they didn't stop production. It's director's cut version of a game called Metal Slayer Glory, which was which was an adventure game. So not really an original game, just more like a remake of the game, somewhat. But still, 2000 was when that came out. So, and Nintendo did not actually stop producing the Super Famicom or the original Famicom until 2003 in Japan.
Jeez, that was GameCube era.
Yes. So very long lifespans in Japan, like even longer the systems had in North America. Not that North American lives are short either, for that matter. But yeah, so just to get that in perspective, because 1997, I certainly was not buying Super NES games anymore. The last Super NES game I bought was Super Mario RPG, because by the point that this game came out, I was already in my senior year of college, and so I had the Super NES. I had the Super NES with me, but I was only playing it occasionally to play with like the old favorites or whatnot. Until emulation came along a few years later and got good enough to be able to handle. Speaking about emulation, this game was also challenged for emulators for a long time because of its special hardware that it used. I did try this game out with modern emulators, such as the newer version of Super NES, and likewise emulators, and nowadays the game does run fine. Like a modern emulator, so they finally did conquer that issue. So anyway. onto the gameplay itself. The manual for this game is actually pretty good. It's very cute, comic-y, kind of like story manual, but it's also like but it's also chock full of details of how the controls work and how what kind of power-ups that Kirby can have in this game and what what animal friends you can attach to and that kind of stuff. And it also gives hints to the secret conditions because. One of the most interesting things about this game, certainly one of the most frustrating things about this game, is that if you play the game normally, you just get the normal ending. There are hidden conditions in this game that you have to look for as you play through it, called heart stars, and you get a heart star in each stage if you meet the condition that stage requires. And in order to unlock the best ending and the final bosses in the game, you have to click all the heart stars in the game. And it's like some of these pretty easy to find. Others of these are really obtuse. And if look down the list of going how anybody would have found these back in the day, I have no idea because some of these are really secret and hard to find. But the game does certainly encourage replayability because of that, and also because of the other. There are also other hidden options and modes to unlock as you play the game, which we'll talk about here later on the podcast. But anyway, I've set up the stage long enough. Doom, you were the one who wanted to talk about the game, so I'll let you go first, talk about gameplay and whatnot. Real quick. I also, I always do like to mention also the game was renamed for its Western release. In Japan, this game was known as, and I'll try the Japanese here again, Hoshi no Kaibai Suri, which translates as Kirby of the Stars. So, that title fits pretty well too, I think. But, so anyway, you probably had the most playtime and experience with this game here out of three of us, since you were, and since you obviously love enough to want to talk about it here with us today. So, please let us know. Let us know your impressions of the game when you first played it. Let us know your thoughts about the gameplay and what you really enjoy, or perhaps find frustration with it.
Well, I will start off by saying that visually this game is great. I mean, it's very reminiscent of Yoshi's Island, which came before with the crayon style. But this game looks more in motion than Yoshi's Island did. They brought that style up to another level. And no other Kirby game really had ever done that, so it stands out even to this day because of that style. Sound-wise, it's pretty much what you'd expect from Kirby. Gameplay, it's kind of a little bit of an expansion of Kirby's Dream Land 2, where there aren't that many copy abilities in the game. There's only 8, but you've got the animal friends as well, which now there are, 6 of them as compared to 3 in Dreamland 2. And so each combination of ability plus animal friend will give you a completely new move. So there's a lot of mixing and matching to be done here and just kind of toying around with stuff. And as you mentioned, the Heart Stars, also kind of an expansion of the Rainbow Drops from Dreamland 2, which there were only 7 of those in Dreamland 2, but some of them were really hard to get. But this time they put a Heart Star in every single stage. There's 30 of them in total, and you have to get every single one if you want that true ending in the final boss. And like you were saying, if you're not playing this game with a guide, you're going to struggle with getting these, because some of them have no real hints to them whatsoever. You just kind of have to know what to do. Even in some of the early stages where the second stage in the game, you have to bring Choo Choo to the end of it and use her regular attack on the character at the end of the stage. And it's there's no clue whatsoever in the game that that's what you're supposed to do to get that Heart Star. As far as my impression of it initially, when I first played this back in probably 97 when it came out, I liked it, but I didn't finish it. I got a little bit bogged down by it. I think it was the level at the end of Sand Canyon where you're inside that like pyramid and you're trying to collect the different parts for Rob, which can be a really long stage if you're trying to do all that. Because you gotta like constantly switch your abilities and your animal friends to collect each part. And yeah, something about that stage just kind of like I got fatigued by it, and I ended up not finishing the game. And also, I think the timing of it, not just because the timing of the game's release, not just because it came out so late in the console's lifespan, but also the fact that it came out after Kirby Superstar, which is to this day one of my favorite Kirby games and one of my favorite games on the system. It's like one of my most played Super Nintendo games. That game just had like the copy abilities each had a whole bunch of different moves that you could do, which really like amped up the gameplay in my opinion. Whereas in Dreamland 3, each combination of ability plus animal friend really only gives you one move to work with. So you're kind of stuck with that for however long you decide to keep that ability in animal friend. And the general pace of the game is not as fast as Superstar, so it felt like a step back to me when I initially played it. But then I played it again years later, and I think I latched onto it much better. I still think, some of the heart stars are a pain to get, like those the mini game ones where you particularly like the ones with the Gordos, and you're trying to you're given like a very quick snapshot of like each of these Gordos has a different face, and you have to, and then it says like how many had this face, and
right.
If you didn't like take a picture of it, like you might not have caught all of them during that tiny little moment you have to look at them all. And if you fail it, you have to start the whole stage over again. There's no, like, you can't just kill yourself in that room and then redo the mini game. It just gives you no option to do that. So it's just a pain to have to redo that. So I would certainly suggest to anyone playing it nowadays, for those mini game heart stars, make a save state before you do those, just to save yourself some time. That's probably all I want to say for now. I do eventually want to talk about the final boss, but we can wait on that.
Sure. Yep, that's fine. No, I definitely agree with you. I definitely agree with. I definitely agree with you as far as the game overall, both positive and negative. Did you buy this game when it came out back in the day, or just
I did not? I only played it at my friend's house.
Okay, all right. Oh, okay, yep. I did not play this game until I think I first played it a few years ago when it got added to the Switch, but I really didn't spend much time with it until playing it for the podcast. Now is really the first time I actually sat down and played the game seriously to check it out, because I enjoy Kirby, but I'm not like the biggest Kirby fan out there. So I do think the game's definitely fun. There are fun, but just like I'm just not the biggest fan of the series. Joe, let's go over to you. Was this your first time playing the game also?
No, so I first discovered this game about 10 years ago. Obviously through emulation, because I did not have a Super NES, for those who are new to the podcast. So anyways, so I had played this game for a little bit, and it was one of those like, okay, cool, looks like, Yoshi's Island, it's fun, but never put any time into it, tried to beat it, anything like that. And then, of course, once I started doing this podcast, I consciously avoided this game, because at some point we were going to cover it for the podcast, and I didn't want to kind of, I like to go in with a fresh outlook on these games when I can. So,
sure, yeah.
I purposely avoided this game. That being said, I agree with Sean. Like, Kirby's a cute character. He's always been a cute character. My first experience with Kirby was the Game Boy game, Dreamland 1 and 2. Personally, Dreamland is my second favorite Kirby. My favorite Kirby is probably blasphemy to most people, but it's Pinball Land for the Game Boy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I still go back and play that game all the time. Greg knows my love for pinball, so it kind of makes sense. That being said, I felt this game was really slow, especially compared to Superstar. We played Superstar, and I loved it. It was essentially a remake of the Game Boy game with some mini games added onto it, and it was just a good overall experience. Where I feel like this one just really bogged it down, almost to that speed that the original Game Boy game was, because they kind of picked up the speed in Kirby Dreamland 2 a bit. The introduction of the 3 new animal companions is nice. I do like the fact that with the press of, I think it's the Y or the X button, you can spawn Gooey.
We didn't even talk about Gooey yet.
Yeah, Gooey gives an option of co-op, and it's a drop in and out co-op, which I like. Like you don't have to have someone with you all the time, but you're playing a game and your buddy pops over. It's nice that you have that option to just be like, hey, you know what, you want to join in on this, and you pop out Gooey and they can do their thing. So that's nice.
GUI can also be controlled by the computer, also, by the way, just as a point. That point of reference, but which can be helpful. Which can be helpful in some situations. But since you lose half your health by spawning GUI, I actually never used him in the game.
So there's actually a cheese that you can do with him if you're playing by yourself. If you're down to your last hit, summon GUI, then eat him again. And you will regain a unit and a half of health.
Yep.
Oh, I actually did not realize that. Okay, all right, that's cool.
Also, if GUI dies, there's no penalty for it. So that's another thing that was really nice. So you can, you don't have to have the best player with you when you decide to do co-op for this game.
Yeah.
I thought it was nice that they expanded the pets, like we had mentioned. I do like, that they have. It's all the same abilities you had in Kirby Dreamland 2. The new one is like the broom, which how useful is it? This game is designed to make you use the different abilities. You'll see a lot of the blocks that you have to destroy to get little pieces of the stars are specific types of enemies that you have to inhale, and sometimes it's like quick succession. So I think in the first level it's like you have the little rock guy and he breaks 2 blocks, but then you need to eat the fire guy to be able to clear off a larger section of those blocks, and also to access extra lives and whatnot. But it's Kirby, so I can sit here and complain about the speed, which is a big issue. But ultimately, in my opinion, this would be it'd be like remastering Kirby's Dreamland 2 with some DLC. I guess that's the best way to explain it, because it is very similar, especially with the heart stars and whatnot. I don't know. It's like there's part of me that really wants to play devil's advocate and talk about everything that's bad about this, because I knew that you guys were going to be pretty positive on it. And then you mentioned how slow it is, and it's definitely different than the Game Boy games a bit, and especially Kirby's Adventure. So you kind of threw me off a bit. But other than that, the combinations are kind of cool, between, the ability that you have and the pet that you have. I don't think, and this obviously isn't the podcast to really talk about it, but I don't think it incorporates it as well as, like, say, Crystal Shards on the 64.
Oh, yeah, with the combining of abilities.
Yes, yeah. And even later Kirby games kind of do that as well. But this is definitely, like, the first kind of instance where they were kind of like, yeah, we want you to do combinations and figure things out and kind of go from there. Yeah, and the secret hidden things to be able to get the heart stars was kind of annoying. Prime example, first time I played through this, I trampled all the flowers throughout the level because, I didn't know that I was supposed to not trample on them. But, yeah, I mean, it's Kirby. It's Kirby. He's a cute little guy. That's never going to change, even with the newest game. He's still a cute little pink ball, inhaling whatever he possibly can. I still remember those commercials showing him, inhaling everything for the original Dreamland game. So,
yeah,
it's one of those things that's stuck in my mind, especially after, watching years of Saturday morning cartoons. So,
yeah. Again, both of you guys made some very valid points, and for the most part, I agree with everything that you're saying. You're not the only people. You're like other people who have definitely made the direct comparison of comparing Dreamland 3 to Superstars, which we will talk about the later on for sure. But I definitely agree with I definitely agree with you. Almost everything you're saying. Just give some other thoughts of my own. I did not think the pacing was too slow. I mean, yeah, the game was slower for sure than like Superstar, but the pacing felt okay to me. The graphics are indeed gorgeous. Sean mentioned the comparison to the Yoshi's Island 2, and yeah, it definitely has that very beautiful cartoon / crayon look to it, which makes it very endearing. The soundtrack's also very Kirby appropriate. There definitely are songs here I recognize that I recognize from past games. I can't tell you exactly how many songs they recycled
they
or
definitely
what games they're from. But
Gourmet Race.
Yep.
Yeah, so so the combination of old new music here was very well done. Something we have talked about before. I thought the challenge of the game is pretty good because I think that one of the knocks about the Kirby games is the Kirby games are very kid friendly, and they really weren't all that challenging to older players. At least I don't know if people still feel that way. I just remember back in the day when they first came out, a lot of folks complained about that because Kirby was seen more as a kiddie franchise. It really wasn't until maybe during this game and some other later games down the road that the franchise kind of became more universal age acceptable for everybody. But the challenge to me felt just right in this game. The game starts off fairly easy and ranks up in difficulty pretty well. Most of the bosses are not that hard once you get the pattern to it. The real challenge is collecting on the heart stars, as you talked about. But if you just go through the game normally, it's not that bad. Most of the playthroughs for this game online are about 2.5 hours, give or take. So, I mean, it's not an overly long game, but a game if you're good at it and know, and it's like just trying to just focus. And focus on just playing through the game regularly. So there are save states, which are a nice thing to have here. So and the platforming just feels fun. Nintendo knows how to make great platformers.
Yeah.
They always have. They always will. I think, but the form. It doesn't matter the franchise. It doesn't matter the system. They just the Nintendo platformer you get in your hands, no matter what it is, just feels right for some reason. So the controls are sharp, responsive. It's fun discovering all the combinations you can do with Kirby. The addition of the new moves, the new animals certainly give you some more repertoires to add to your belt to kind of enhance the gameplay. And because there are additional things to find, above and beyond the heart stars, this game does have some good does have some good like replay value to it, I think. And also there's also like very like Easter eggs included with some of the hard start conditions. And in one for example, you see Rob at the end, which is like throwback to that to like that guy. And another another stage with a hard star requires you to freeze. There's actually Metroid to show up. Which I was shocked the first time I saw them. I'm like, wow, Metroid and Kirby game, damn. But so you have to freeze at the freeze the Metroids to get the hard start for that stage. It's a shame you can't actually swallow up a Metroid like in that power, because that'd be like pretty pretty freaking awesome.
I want to say a couple things about that. I think it's a neat touch how Samus is at the end of the stage, and if you haven't gotten the Heart Star, she has her helmet on, but if you have, her helmet is off. Kind of like a throwback to the different endings in Metroid games where you can see her.
And she has blonde hair too.
Yeah.
So
and I think it's funny that the Metroids don't actually do damage to you, because
nope.
Like they're known in the Metroid series for sucking the life energy out of anything that they come in contact with. But is Kirby made of something else that prevents him from being drained by them?
You can't drain cute.
It's kind of a funny theory base sort of thing.
Definitely. So it's very nice. It's very nice, Easter eggs, like the Easter eggs, like they had for here, like find these things. So
there's even a couple that are references to like some really obscure Japan only games.
Yes, also like the I have them here in the notes here about that. No, sorry, not the. I lost in my notes. Never mind. But yes, you're right. There are references here to Japanese only games. I did see that also. Like I was playing it. So like I said before, the challenge feels pretty good to me in the game, all things considered, because and the fact there is, as Joe pointed out, some of the some of the modes, some of the power-ups are better than others. But the fact that the fact that the repertoire is expanded, like this, like it's a very nice touch for sure. The fact there is 2-player mode available if you want to. Like GUI's a great touch, but which GUI reminds me very much about like a Slime, the Dragon Quest games. I don't know if that's where the idea from came from, but it would be a nice homage if it was.
He was actually in Dreamland 2. If you had
that's true.
An animal friend and then rescued where another animal friend would be, it would be GUI instead of that animal friend. But now they actually made him playable.
Right. And finally, also, I don't know if you guys actually got the true ending of the game or saw the
we have to talk about that.
Yes, because it's very unique in several ways. First of all, the whole theme of the game up to that point, it just screams cuteness. It's like the graphics, the enemies, the play style, Kirby himself doing his balance of the music. Everything is so durable in this game, almost to the point of being sick, really, because the game is so cute. And then, if you unlock the regular ending, we didn't talk about the plot ending. There's a plot. The plot's typical silly Kirby stuff, but but basically King Dedede gets possessed by gets taken over by dark matter, and he's the final boss in a regular game. So if you beat him, then you get an ending of the game, but then it kind of hints at the fact that something else above and beyond what's going on here in the game with the ending and whatnot. So that kind of encourages you to try to find it. If you do get all the conditions, however, to unlock the final stage, the final boss fights, the whole theme of the game changes radically. It's very like nightmare fuel almost inducing. The fact that it gets the screen, the graphics all change. Like black and red and dark. The music becomes more ominous. The final bosses of Dark Matter and Zero are very almost bloody in some areas because it's like the game does have an E for everybody rating, but they also gave it a 7+ to tacked onto it to reflect the fact that there is kind of like cartoonish blood kind of at the end of the game, like the final boss fights. It just is such a night and day difference, literally, between the rest of the game and the rest of the game, like that final, like, you know, the final level 6 Hyperzone. It still looks great. It's still a very great creative touch, but it's very shocking the first time that you get there.
Yes. I think Kirby games nowadays are more known for having kind of creepy final bosses, but when this game came out, that was like really shocking. And even to this day, it's probably the most staggering example in the series of the difference between the main game and the final boss. And like Zero is like making these incisions in his body to shoot bullets of blood at you. And then when you deplete his health, his eye rips out of the rest of his body in like a bloody explosive mess and chases you down, leaving a trail of blood behind him. It's just like, wow, okay, they went off the rails here at the end of this game.
Definitely like because it looks great. It certainly fits you. It makes sense in terms of like a story and the overall theme that they're going for here. But yes, it is very shocking. But and the two final bosses are no joke. They're actually like pretty difficult fights, I thought. Yeah,
even Dark Matter by itself is like very similar to the Dark Matter fight in Dreamland 2, and then you got to fight Zero after that.
Yeah.
Yep. So definitely a challenge for sure. So, but I appreciate it. So, this game certainly has a lot of like replayability value to it. If you enjoy the overall game itself, because you have the addition of GUI, so another GUI added to it for like, cooperative play if you want to, finding out the hard stars, all the different combinations that you can do and whatnot, things you can do in the game. We will talk about toward the end the other hidden modes you can access in this game, because it's back in the day when you actually had to play the game to unlock conditions, to unlock the different modes in the game. Nowadays they just give you like by a code or something, but but in these days you actually had to like get good at the game to unlock this stuff. Mm-hmm. So Dreamland 3 is no exception to that. So there definitely is a lot of replay value to this. It's a shame this game came out so late when it did, because by the time the game came out, it got almost no press, which is which is why another reason why among other reasons that the game did not sell very well. No commercials, very little coverage of Flight Hand of Power back in the day. There were contemporary reviews of this game, which we'll get to here later on, but the combination of no marketing and the fact it was so late in the lifespan did the game no favors, unfortunately. If this game come out, Nintendo did give big marketing pushes behind both Donkey Kong Country and Super Mario RPG, despite how late in the system those games came out. If this game come out 2 years previously, who knows how well that might have sold. But I am glad the game's. Sorry.
I think it would have done a lot better if it had come out before Superstar, because I think playing Superstar first, for me personally, I had this impression of okay, the next Kirby game's going to be like that, and it wasn't. But I think if it had come up before Superstar, it would have been like going from Dreamland 2 to Dreamland 3, which I think would have been a smoother transition for it.
Yeah. Yep.
From what I understand, the game was supposed to come out before Superstar. Like I said, the game's been a long time to develop it, because
that's unfortunate that it didn't make that deadline then.
Yeah, but yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about that then as well, because the reviews of this game when it came out were mixed, and the biggest point, IGN, just give you guys like your scores. IGN gave it 7 out of 10. Nintendo gave it 6 out of 10. Nintendo Power itself gave it 6.5 out of 10. The aggregated game ranking of this game, even today online, is still 66%, and the main knocking point that people gave it back then as to why the score of the game is so low is because they said it's not Superstar. It's not as good as Superstar is. And
Superstar was such a high bar to clear.
Yeah. And that's the problem, because it's not fair to the game.
It really isn't.
Like I said before, this game, as its title implies, is Dreamland 3. It's direct continuing of the Dreamland series, which is own mini franchise in the franchise, if you will, because you had Dreamland for the Game Boy, which led to Dreamland 2 and the Dreamland 3. This game is a direct sequel of those games. A lot of the same things carry over from those games, where Superstar, as I already pointed out, is just simply a remake of the original Game Boy game with additional mini games tacked onto it. Superstar was such a success and such a fun game because of the combination of all those mini games working together that people kind of forgot about that. And what we were saying, if the Dreamland 3 came out before Superstar, I think the game would have the game definitely would have been received more positively. But it's also not fair to compare, I think, this game to Superstar. I think people have to I would encourage people. The game has flaws, yes. Like Joe said, it can be kind of slow, it can be kind of clumsy. Finding hard stars by yourself is a forget about it, you can't do it kind of thing. But if you go in this game with a fresh mind, tell yourself it's not Superstar. It's basically a sequel of previous Superstar. It basically is a sequel to the previous Dreamland games, and try to go into the game with a fresh mind. I think you'll have a lot more fun with the game that way, because I don't think it's because rightly or wrongly, it's not wrong. The game gets compared to Superstar all the time. And it's not very fair to the game because it was never designed to compete with Superstar. It was designed to be Dreamland 3, aka a direct sequel of the previous Dreamland games. But so again, I think that had the game not been delayed and come up before Superstar did, who knows what would have happened. But it's but yeah. So if you love the Game Boy games, then this one's definitely right up your alley, because this game is just simply an improved version of those games. If on the other hand, you're more of a fan of Adventure for the NES and for Superstar, you may struggle getting the same enjoyment out of this game overall. Even though it is still a very competent, solid Kirby title that I think still holds up pretty well today. I mean, it's I'm very glad Nintendo put this game on the Switch with some of the Kirby games, because more people because a lot of people didn't play it back in the day, and they should check it out, especially if they're fans of the franchise.
Yeah, I think it's a much more approachable game now than it was then.
Yeah,
partly because if you're playing it on the Switch, you can save state, and that helps with getting the heart stars and also just looking stuff up, as opposed to not having any resources to be able to do that when it first came out. And it's not. I think a lot of people nowadays who play it would approach it as this is a Kirby game from the past, not this is a Kirby game coming out after Superstar.
Right.
So they won't have to make that direct comparison so much.
Yeah, and curiously enough, to add on to that point again, Sean, modern reviews of the game are more positive than reviews were back in the day. Yeah. People seem to have people overall seem to have a higher opinion of this game now than 30 years ago.
Yeah, and like I said, when I gave my opinion on the game, I particularly was playing devil's advocate and bringing up the shortcomings for a specific reason, because, like I said, I knew you guys were gonna give some love to the game.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad you did. Because
it
is a bit slower than Dreamland 2, but it's in line with the first Dreamland. So, I'm curious as to where, if this was technically supposed to be Dreamland 2, and maybe became Dreamland 3? I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, now it seems unfair to compare it to Superstar, with all the Kirby's games that we've come out since. But I agree with Sean, it's, it's now judged by that was Kirby then, not where we are now.
I think HAL tried to learn, I think the developers, like HAL Laboratories, did learn their lesson and tried to incorporate the best of both Superstars and Dreamland 3 when they made the next game in the series, the N64 game Crystal Shards, because that game, it's been a long time since I played that game, but I remember playing. That game tried very hard to blend both previous sub franchises, if you will. You mentioned Crystal Shards before, Sean. Were you a fan of that game too?
I liked it, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that game did have elements like both Dreamland and also like a Superstar in it?
I don't know if I would compare it that much to Superstar. I think by the time it came out, it was more like there was more of a distance between it and Superstar, so there wasn't as much of a need to directly compare it to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 3 years. So yeah.
But it also it doesn't have the animal friends anymore that the Dreamland games had.
Yeah, that's true.
And they came up with something completely new, giving you 2 different copy abilities that you can combine into a new one.
Yep.
I guess you could make the argument that there's some Superstar influence there, but I personally don't see it that much.
No, I think you're right. I think I may be reading into it a bit too much, but when you're thinking about that, I'm going I kind of see some elements from that because I think that they were trying to, they're trying to, I think they were trying to kind of blend in the best elements for the previous games with that one as well. But also putting into like a 3D world like that also was it was also like a huge change.
Yeah, I think for me a lot of it was just like, hey, a Kirby game on the N64, awesome, I'm gonna play it.
Yeah, right. No, Joe, it's like I definitely thank you. I definitely do want to thank you for bringing the point you did because we would have brought them up eventually ourselves, but to have you do it concisely and clearly at the start was a big help because it's like I said, I do agree with everything you're saying about the game, but I don't think. Overall, I don't enjoy this game as much as Superstars either, for that matter. But I still think it's a pretty solid, fun game in its own right. And I just think the hardest part for a Kirby fan is to separate the two games in their head. If you can do that, I think you have, I think your enjoyment of the game will definitely go up, and I am happy to see that more modern reviews of this game are more positive to the game that they're, compared to when it was originally released. So, sometimes time is not good for a game. Sometimes time does help games. New generation of gamers come along, give the game, look at the game in a new light, and things improve from there. Look at other classic Super NES game, Earthbound. That game also did not do very well when it first came out either, but it's obviously to be a classic. So, it's like, gamers, as gamers, I think we have responsibility to always try to keep an open mind on things and go back every now and then to look at games that came out like 5, 10, 20 years ago and give them like a fresh, try to look at them with fresh eyes to see, does a game deserve the reputation it has, or is something here that we missed? Because I think that a lot of games can improve, like fine wine can improve over age. I think that in some ways, Dreamland 3 is a great, Dreamland 3 is a great poster child for that.
Yeah. And also, this game shows that, if you take the game at face value, and you beat it, you beat D2D and everything, that's your game. That's your game. It's easy, it's straightforward, it is what it is. But they bake that challenge of the Heart Stars and then being able to fight Dark Matter and Zero, and you get rewarded for taking that little bit of effort and tackling that challenge. Because, in my opinion, overall, the game's pretty easy. But if you want to see the true ending, that's where the challenge is.
Exactly,
it's getting all the hard starts and everything else. So you can make the game as easy as you want or as hard as you want. And that continued forward with the Kirby games that we even have now. Those games are all straightforward. You can just go straight through and beat them. Or you can do all the challenges, get, the different whatever it is that you have to collect in that particular game, and then, face the true ending. And that's one thing I've always loved about Kirby, is that there is a straightforward way that if you just want to say, hey, I played the game and I beat it, great, that's for you. But then there's that other part where it's like, hey, you want to say that you beat the game and 100%ed it? Well, go do these challenges.
Yeah, the most recent one that I played was Star Allies, and beating that game, fine. Not really that hard. But beating the hardest level of the boss rush, my god. That was tough. But I did manage to do
it. I shared in the I shared in the Discord a playthrough of the game on YouTube where somebody was able to not only beat the game with the best ending, but he also got no hit damage doing it as well too. So that's definitely a challenge taken in of itself. So yeah, you can impose your own conditions, the conditions that are under the games to have under the games as well. To also help, which I think also some of the newer Mario games do that same thing too. Also, yes. I think so. It's like they're Nintendo's starting to. Nintendo as a company is very flawed, but there are some things that they do well. You already praised how good their platforming games are. They're also trying to make their games more multi-layered as far as the challenges go, such as like the player can decide how easy or hard they want to make it, which I always appreciate. It's like, give the player the option of how much difficulty that they want to have in the game. Don't force it upon you, because I've always been an advocate for that. Anyway, so final thoughts. I think I already said mine pretty well. Fun game. I think I can appreciate the game more now than I could have if I had played it back when it first came out. I do like Superstars better, but as a whole, I do think this is a very fun game. It's like graphically the game's still gorgeous, the soundtrack is still amazing. There are things in this game that you see carry forward to later games in the franchise, which was fun. So, and this game's still early enough for the series history. Like I said, it's the 5th mainline game in the franchise. I lost track of how many mainline games are on the franchise now at this point. Like 12, 13, something like that.
Yeah.
There's a bunch, So you're still going back early enough to the point where you can see things being developed and grow. So that's always fun. But anybody's a Kirby a Kirby fan should probably check this out. I think definitely. Like I said, it's on the Switch, which is a very cheap, affordable way to play it. Because we will talk about pricing of an actual cart these days, and oh boy. But anyway, So I definitely recommend checking this game out. Check the Flavor Kirby fan, for sure. So. Actually, I have a really, really question that also. When I ask you for your final thoughts, if somebody is new to the Kirby franchise and wants to jump into the franchise for the first time, besides giving us your final thoughts about the game, what game in the franchise might you suggest that person jump into, maybe to start with, to get a feel of things? Since you're a guest host, Sean, you can go first.
Okay. Well, I started with Adventure on the NES, and I thought that was a great place to start. It's where the copy abilities originated, so if you want to get a real good sense of where it kind of all came together, I guess, that's a good place to go. But also, the original Dreamland is also a good starting point because it's very simple. Yeah. You don't have to even think about copy abilities. You just inhale enemies and spit them out.
Yep.
And so if you like that kind of simple gameplay, then that's a real good place to start. But I guess I could also argue with Superstar is a good starting place just because it's so good. But it's a little more complex than some of the earlier games were. So I don't know, maybe not as much of a good starting point because of that. And as far as like later games in the series, I liked Return to Dreamland a lot for the Wii, which also got the remaster on the Switch, I believe.
Yep.
Yes.
Either one is probably a good way to play it. Star Allies, which was the last one that I played, probably not that one. It's a little bit different. I don't see that as a good starting point, even though I do think it's a really good game. And this one's not a traditional Kirby game at all, but Kirby's Epic Yarn is a very easy game. You can't even die in it. Yeah, so if you're looking for something that isn't a challenge, then you might even consider starting there. And yeah, it's just like, I don't know, that game is just full of happy feelings.
Yep.
So, all right, so besides that, final thoughts on Dreamland 3, yeah, kind of like what Greg said, it's, and like TV Trope says, this game was vindicated by history. It's, it may not have gotten its due respect back in the day, but I think if people play it now, they'd be able to appreciate it more and just like don't compare it so much to Superstar.
Okay, yep, great, thank you. Joe, I'll ask you the same questions. What do you think? So, final thoughts on this game, and like, do you have any favorite starting games in the franchise?
Yeah, so I mean, normally I would agree with Sean. I'd say Kirby's Dream Land or Kirby's Adventure would be a great place to start. I am actually going to say Kirby Superstar is the best place to start, just because it is technically a remake of Kirby's Dream Land, so you're still experiencing that first game and understanding the history of the franchise. As far as a more modern game, I absolutely loved Epic Yarn. It's probably one of the best Wii games that came out, and it used the controller very well. And then I would probably recommend, honestly, Kirby and the Forgotten Land.
I haven't played that one yet.
So not a lot of people talk about it, but it's basically Mario Odyssey, but with Kirby, and he can now swallow cars and whatnot to be able to traverse the land and everything else. So like it is definitely like that next step in the evolution of Kirby games, and I think the Forgotten Land is now what Dreamland was for us. Like, it's the beginning of what is going to be coming forward. And you know, as far as my final thoughts, I don't feel the need to repeat everything you guys just said. So I'm going to say ditto. Definitely, if you are a Kirby fan, check the game out. If you are not a Kirby fan and looking where to start, well, I think we all just gave a bunch of options for you to be able to start that journey. I don't want to sit there and slam down my fist and be like, I'm old man gamer and this is where you should start. I'm just not that guy. So, you can start with Kirby Superstar because, like I said, it's technically a remake of the Game Boy game. And it's a little more accessible because it's console. And it's got pretty colors. Some people don't like the whole black and white or, green and black, depending on how you're playing the game. And then, like I said, the more modern game, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, still has a lot of that cuteness. It still has a lot of what Kirby is. It's the next evolution of these games.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely agree with all that. So, wanted to give your thoughts. Wanted to give you guys a chance to give your thoughts because both of you are bigger fans of the Kirby franchise than I am, and play more of the games. So, all right. So, secrets. There is actually a hidden ending screen you can access. If you get the true ending of the game, you can hold down the X, L, and R buttons before the screen fades, and instead of the usual credits, play a hidden screen instead. So this is nice.
I don't think I knew about that.
Yeah, it's a nice little Easter egg. But So the options menu in the game, I've already mentioned before how there are things defined there for sure. Because in the options, because the game starts, the only option you have in the option menu is to change the sound from stereo to mono. So it's like, what's the point of this being here then? But there's a reason it's there because. If you do certain things playing the game, you're able to access 3 options on the option menu, which are labeled as question mark, B, and J. So, question mark, you unlock the question mark option by beating all the other mini games like in the game. So, once you're able to do that, then this opens up. Option B, you have to. Option B opens up for you once you beat the final true boss. And what option B is, it's basically a boss rush. B stands for bosses. You have to fight against all 6 bosses, one after the other, like 1 life, no chance to heal. So good luck. And then the final option, the J option, which is the jumping mini game that you can play. You just have to. You just have to complete like a mini game in the previous question mark option mode. So that's how you unlock the additional options that this game has. So
and it's worth mentioning that if you want 100% on your file, you must do all of those. Yeah. If you just beat the game and beat 0, that only gets you 97%.
Yep.
Yes. We didn't talk about that. I do appreciate I do appreciate the fact the game does give you a percentage of how much that's been locked. I think this were the first games I remember seeing that actually had that. I'm sure there were games that came out before this that had that, did. But Adventure did? Okay, yeah, I forgot about that.
It even gave you like a ranking based on how high your percentage was.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's been a long time. Like I said, I played Adventure, so I forgot about that, but. That's a good call. I think Adventure's on the Switch too. I think also. I think
yes, it is.
I think all the old Game Boy, NES, Super NES games are on the Switch these days. But anyway. So prices. As mentioned before, if you want a physical copy of this game, it's expensive, boy. Because, like I said, this game came out. This game came out late in the system's life. Didn't sell very well as a result, and therefore it's a very it's a pretty pricey game. Cart is not too bad if you're willing to wait for a sale and you don't mind a kind of scruffed up, beat up copy of the game. But CIB, forget about it. You definitely have to open up your pocketbook to get that. The game can be found on eBay without too much hassle. When I looked recently, I found 13 copies of this game being listed on eBay currently with 40 copies of the game that recently sold. And as usual, these prices include only copies only sold in North America, and also include shipping. Car prices ranged wildly from $55, the cheapest version I saw. These prices went all the way up to a whopping $356. So, no repos as far as I can tell. I guess because the fact the game is available on Switch, that kind of like killed the market for that. But a lot of people will show on eBay the actual card opened up, the actual board to prove to you that this is a real legit copy of the game, because it is a very pricey thing to add to your collection. CIB copies are even worse. Those range anywhere from a beat up copy with a bad box manual for $5 to $50, all the way up to pristine mint brand new looking for $1,307 I sold recently. So very expensive game to get if you're a collector, unfortunately. Definitely one of the more crown jewels for your collection. Anybody who still has this game from back in the day, such as maybe like Sean's friend, is sitting on gold mine these days. I don't think he
still has it.
Unfortunately, yeah, because that'd be a shame. The pricing for this game today, you could buy a used car for a good CIB copy that the game goes for these days. So it's pretty nuts. Definitely is one of the more expensive Super NES games to have, but not the rarest, not the most expensive, but definitely up there for sure. And the fact. The fact this is one, a Nintendo published game, and two, a Kirby game, also helps get the prices high also as well, I think. But so thank God it's on the Switch. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it'd be a hard game to play these days. But
I actually have it on the Wii U Virtual Console, but you can't get that anymore.
Right.
True. Yep. Yeah. As long as you have a download store, you can still play it. But there are some games, unfortunately, that have been lost to time because of that. Like, there was a very good reimagining of both the Contra and Gradius games that came out for the Wii U that pretty much were only available for download, and so those are pretty much lost to time, unfortunately. But so
you have a modded console.
True. Or go looking for other ways, but which we won't get into here, but they're out there. So anyway, I think this is probably the most expensive. This is probably the most expensive Kirby game to buy physically because of all these factors.
Yeah.
By the way, if you don't care about the game itself, for some reason the Japanese version like this game much cheaper to get, much cheaper to obtain. Those prices are like a quarter to half like what the North American copies are.
I think that's pretty standard for Super Nintendo games. I remember going to a game store back in 2015 in Japan and seeing Mother 2, aka Earthbound, there for real cheap.
Oh, like you remember how much?
It was probably not more than like $10.
Damn. Yeah. Well, a game like that though, though would be hard to play unless you're Japanese. But a game like this,
you don't need to be able to read to be able to play Dreamland 3.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think there's only the only English in the game is the title screens, and that's it, pretty much, because everything else like numbers and symbols. So totally. But so if you have the option to play a Japanese card, you can also do a mod system or like a modern clone system or whatever. You also can go that route. I've heard that I've never actually done this, but but if you're not averse to doing some hacking, physical hacking, you also can take you take a blade to your Super NES and actually open up and actually cut away some of the plastic on the card openings to make it big enough for Super Famicom card to fit in there.
I've heard about that, yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, So there's so. I wanted to mention I wanted to mention the Japanese copy of this game much cheaper, like the alternative, alternative to get this. So, and lastly, I'll finish off. I'll finish off with one last. I'll finish off with one last relevant trivia point, which I thought was interesting. IGN gave a ranking of the top 100 Super NES games of all time back in 2012. So maybe they wouldn't agree with this score now, since it was 13 years ago now that they ranked these games. But they actually put this game 62 on their ranking back then.
Oh, so, even though they gave it a 7 out of 10 when it first came out.
Exactly. Yeah. So like I said, modern gamers think this game a little, definitely higher than when it first came out. So that was another great example of that. I think for sure. So, but anyway, I think that pretty much wraps us up here. As always, Sean, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast again. Talk about the games you enjoy. No
problem.
You're always welcome. You're always welcome. Yes, you're always welcome. You're always welcome to come back if you see anything else on the list coming up that you want to that you feel got enough but to take time out to show up here for with us. So you always have an open invitation.
I will keep an eye out for whatever you're doing in the future.
Right. So, Joe, as always, thank you for being here with us.
Of course.
So, next time on the podcast, we are doing the delayed edutainment episode that we talked about before. We'll be covering the four educational games came out of the Super NES, which all came out at different times and for different purposes. but it made sense because they all kind of had a similar theme about trying to educate kids on something to lump all four of the games together like in one podcast. Because spoiler, they're not real that deep. Yeah. The games themselves are fine, but unless you talk about a classic like Carmen Sandiego or Oregon Trail, the replay value and the deepness of entertainment games is pretty damn limited. It just made sense to lump all those games.
And we should
podcast.
Specify by edutainment. This is not like Mario is missing or anything like that. This is the ones that have to deal with your health as a child.
Yes.
So it's those edutainment games. So yeah, that's one of the reasons we decided to lump them together, because it's all some health issues that you should be educated on.
I remember one game talks about diabetes, and another one focuses upon
teeth health.
Oh, I'm trying to remember.
Teeth health. Teeth health. Yeah.
Tooth health. Teeth. Yes. Yep. Yeah. That's right. Yep. So. Yep. And there's the other two I can't remember right now, but we will cover and probably lump together the Mario titles at some point eventually as well too. Also, by the way, so
not gonna lie, gonna dread that.
Stay tuned. But I mean, they are official Nintendo games, so
nope, I know.
But
I played Mario Was Missing back in the day, beat the whole thing.
I did also, and spoiler, for being like a Carmen Sandiego, for being a very heavily Carmen Sandiego inspired ripoff, I didn't think the game was that horrible. I mean, it's not great, but it's not great, but it's not bad either. I didn't think so. I'll be curious to see how 30 years has changed my perspective.
I will admit, I learned stuff from that game.
I was going to say Mario Was Missing, and what's it, Mario and the Time Machine.
Mario
yeah. Both of those I came to, I was in my 20s when I first saw those. So, so I have a very jaded look at those games. Spoiler, I'll be definitely devil's advocate when we do that episode.
Fair enough. So, anyway. As always, we thank the listeners out there for giving us some of your time today. More time than usual because it's being the third person on the podcast. So doubly thanks. Have any questions, feedback, suggestions, feel free to hit us on Facebook, or you can also send me an email directly to the SNES Podcast yahoo.com. Sean, do you have anything that you want to plug, promote, advertise, etc. while you're here?
Usually I mention my music quiz, but I guess this time I'll talk about my YouTube channel, which I don't do anything on it anymore, but it's got a pretty extensive archive of streams that I used to do on Twitch, ranging from Kirby games like this one. I streamed it, and I've got Zelda and not necessarily all Nintendo. There's a bunch of other stuff there. Greg's been watching my Persona 4 videos, so
nice.
There's RPGs on there and whatnot. And also my most viewed videos were my Rocket Knight Adventures run, where I beat the whole game on the hardest difficulty level without getting hit.
Oh, nice.
So there is that. And it's you find that on youtube.com/Kodoom, spelled KHODHUM.
I think I've actually seen before, but I don't remember. Where'd that name come from?
It's from a game I made 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, my online name also comes from a game. This one actually came out, so interesting. So there definitely is some connection there for sure. But and Joe's online name is also connected to gaming in some form as well too.
Yeah.
But,
yep.
Which is what's your segue to talk about your stuff, Joe?
Yeah. So I am publicly on Twitter, Facebook. All that stuff is unfiltered, so just, big parental advisory sticker there before looking me up. I also do the Radical Retro Roundup. That podcast is still alive. We're doing it bi-weekly, or bi-monthly now, sorry. Some personal stuff is kind of held off recording, which I'll eventually get into when we do record that episode. But it's Radical Retro Roundup. You guys know it. You guys can Google it. You'll find it. Believe me. I have now made myself pretty accessible through Google. So yeah, didn't realize how accessible I've made myself through Google. So I have to really watch what I post now. But yeah.
That's the curse, unfortunately, for anybody who does any kind of like podcasting, YouTubing, streaming, whatever, because that information is going to be out there.
Yeah. Especially with the a job that I have where I'm constantly talking to the public and kind of giving out bad news sometimes. Yeah. I love it when they're like, "I want your last name," and I'm like, "Nope. I know I can be Googled. Nope. Sorry."
Yeah. Well, they actually have us use an alias when we're doing emails at work.
Oh wow!
It's not my job. Like that same reason because they're like, we don't want your real name getting out there in the public.
Yeah.
But my real name is already out there because of podcasting. Right. So I mean, it's a double-edged sword, but. But anyway, okay. As always, this was fun. Thanks again, as always. Thanks again. Thank you again, Joe, for being accommodating. Doom is the busiest out of the three of us for sure. Yeah. Also hindered by the fact that he's West Coast, where two of us are East Coast. Yeah. So we definitely had to accommodate him to record this podcast. So thank you, Joe, for taking the time to record for daytime when we usually don't. But and Doom, thank you again always. I know you're busy, so thank you again for taking time out of your time as well also for this.
And thank you guys for doing it at a time when I can.
Yeah. It's always been a pleasure having you on, and I have no problem making accommodations to have that happen.
I agree.
Good to hear.
Alrighty, folks. As always, stay safe, be well. Catch you again next time. And take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Super power.